Welcome back to First Verse with Steve and Marissa.
Hello.
Hello. We are going to go through the notes on Exodus 20 because there's a billion of them, and we didn't have time to do it the other day. So, turn me in your Bibles.
So I have I have two different ones for verse 1. Why were the 10 Commandments necessary? Oh, we're on Exodus chapter 20. Why were the 10 Commandments necessary for the new nation? God showed the true function and beauty of his laws. The commandments were designed to lead Israel to a life of practical holiness. And they could see the nature of God and his plan for how they should live. They were intended to direct the community to meet the needs of each individual in a loving and responsible manner. By Jesus' time, however, most people looked at the law the wrong way. They saw it as a means to prosperity in both this world and the next. They thought that to obey every law was the way to earn God's protection from foreign invasion and natural disaster. Law-keeping became an end in itself, not the means to fulfill God's ultimate law of love. It's a pretty good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wait, what you got?
Okay, 20 verse 7. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless, he who takes his name in vain. The note here says that this commandment is against all false swearing, blasphemy, and all profane, vain, trivial, light, and irrelevant uses of God's name in ordinary life. Holy moly.
Mm-hmm.
How many of us have been using God's name so casually?
Mine adds the way we use God's name conveys how we really feel about him. We should respect his name and use it appropriately. We should not take lightly the abuse or dishonor of his name.
It also refers to using God's name in false religions, witchcraft, conjuring, any abuse of the sacred and holy name whatsoever. The right use of his name is confined to which is sacred: prayer, praise, prophecy, teaching, worship, and communion with God and saints.
Mm.
Not saints in the Catholic term. Way you commune about God in teaching settings, in sermons, or stuff like that. This also is an interesting note because it talks about using God's name in pagan ways and witchcraft, and there are a lot of
perversions.
Well, there's a lot of perversions, yes, but there's a lot of practices that want people to, or that encourage people to use Jesus' name as a name in their incantation. So even the Satanists will use Jesus' name in their incantations because they don't believe Jesus is who he says he is.
Leviticus 19:12 says, "Do not swear falsely by my name, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord." So it's listed under various laws in chapter 19, but I just thought that was an interesting addition, because it's obviously something he had to repeat multiple times. And then mine has a note for verse 1 through 6. The Israelites had just come from Egypt, a land of many idols and many gods. Because each god represented a different aspect of life, it was common to worship many gods in order to get maximum number of blessings. When God told his people to worship and believe in him, that wasn't so hard for them. He was just one more god to add to the list. But when he said, "You shall have no other gods before me," that was difficult for them to accept. But if they didn't learn that the God who led them out of Egypt was the only true God, they could not be his people. No matter how faithfully they kept the other 9 commandments, God made this his first commandment. So, and it's interesting because later on, is it chapter 32? They do the whole golden calf thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the next 10 chapters or so, it gets into the full law. And it's not just the 10. The 10 commandments are really just the 10 categories that keep it, or that are the more broader sense of the law. The law is very different, and it will distinguish the Israelites from every other people in the world.
Let's see. For 8 through 11, the Sabbath was a day set aside for rest and worship. He commanded a Sabbath because we as humans need to spend time resting and worshiping each week.
Here's a neat note by Dake. This is the second of 8 times in all the law of Moses that man was commanded to work 6 days and rest the 7th. The first of the 8 times was when God first gave the Sabbath to man. This particular commandment is not in the new covenant at all, and so since the old or Mosaic covenant has been abolished, it is not in force anymore. Christians are now free to observe any Sabbath of their choice. And it cites Romans 14, Galatians 4:9, Colossians 2:14. But it is important to keep the Sabbath no matter what, because one, God commanded it, and two, you can't just keep going and going and going. Eventually,
if you don't rest, your body's going to give out on you.
Eventually, you're going to just get that's what is killing a lot of the people nowadays is burnout. Burnout is just because, okay, look, America is a nation of work. We pride ourselves on how much we work, and it's not always a good pride. I was having a talk with a friend a long time ago, and he said, you know, what separates America from every other developed country out there? And I said, we take pride in how much we work. And it's sickening to a point, because all these other countries in Europe, and I remember a case in the Netherlands where like they'll work like 8 months out of the year, and they can take up to like 4 months off. And they're super strict about when they get off of work, they don't pick up work again, which, gosh, that would be really nice. They don't answer emails. They don't answer calls. They have a strict segregation. Anyway.
You can tell Stephen really likes taking a Sabbath.
Yeah, because...
And I don't know that we necessarily like take a true Sabbath each week, but like Stephen does take time to rest.
Your corporate boss doesn't care about you. You can easily be replaced. It is all right. The last time, all right. I'll finish it here. There are so many instances where the American workforce is treated like the Egyptian, or the Israelites in Egypt. There are many benefits we have. It's not the same. It's not slavery, but the pride that goes into it. The pride is just an undisputable amount of look what I have done. And that's why so many people have a hard time in American society putting down their works and taking up their cross. It's because they keep on saying, I have done it. I have done it. Look what I have done. God didn't do anything. And it's wrong. And it's terrible. Because we have bred this mentality that work is the most important thing in the world. And it's only important when it's given to God. All right, I'll stop.
Okay. I have a note on verse 12. So that's the honor your father and mother verse. It says this is the first commandment with a promise attached. To live in peace for generations in the Promised Land, the Israelites would need to respect authority and build strong families. But what does it mean to honor parents? Partly, it means speaking well of them and politely to them. It also means acting in a way that shows them courtesy and respect, but not to obey them if it means disobedience to God. It means following their teaching and example of putting God first. Parents have a special place in God's sight. Even those who find it difficult to get along with their parents are still commanded to honor them. And we're learning what that looks like. It's not easy. But we do love our parents. We are incredibly blessed by them. Verse 16. So essentially it's saying, like, you shall not lie against your neighbor. You shall not give false testimony means you're not lying against your neighbor. Giving false testimony means lying in court. God knew that Israel would not survive unless its system of justice was incorruptible. We should be honest in our private dealings as well in our public statements. In either situation, we give false testimony by leaving something out of the story, telling a half-truth, twisting the facts, or inventing a falsehood. God warns us against deception. Even though deception is a way of life for many people, God's people must not give in to it. And any form of lying or deception is ultimately manipulation, which is witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
And then my notes on verse 17, to covet is to wish to have the possessions of others. It goes beyond simply admiring someone else's possessions or thinking, I'd like to have one of those. It includes envy and resenting the fact that others have what you don't. But God knows that possessions never make anyone happy for long, since He can supply all our needs. True contentment is only found in God. You got anything for 12 through 18 or 17?
Does your translation say you shall not murder?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Because in some translations it says you shall not kill. And there's a huge distinguish there because it says it should say thou shalt not murder. Murder is a premeditated act.
Mm-hmm.
Look up U.S. law, what it says between kill and murder for a more tighter definition. But basically, the difference is when you have to, if you have to, God forbid, you're ever in a position where you have to take someone's life to preserve yours. But if you do, if you have to kill someone in defense of your life, that is not against God's law. It is against God's law when you murder them. So, in a situation like that, you have the upper hand, the person has been subdued. If you were to take their life, that would fall in the category of murder. So, don't do it.
Amen.
You shall not commit adultery, verse 14. So regarding this sin, both man and woman are placed in the same category. Our duty toward our neighbor is to respect the bond on which the family is based, and that conjugal honor, which to the true man is dearer than life, marriage, according to the original institution, makes the husband and wife one flesh. Cross my fingers. Oh, there we go. One flesh. And to break in upon the sacramental union was at once a crime against, or a crime and a profanity. It is a sin against man and against God. Yeah, even if you're single, let's get something straight. Even if you're single and you sleep with someone else, that's still considered adultery because you are not bound to them. There's no reason you should be bound to them. You are making a union where one was not ordained. And that is a serious, serious ordeal. If you are in such a relationship, I urge you to get out of it, repent,
Mhm.
And to go before God and either get married to that person or go on and find your spouse. Verse 17 is interesting. It kind of runs alongside it. Verse 17 is, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, their wife, their male servant, their female servant, their ox. Covet is a desire. You shall not want after. You shall not lust after.
Mhm.
Lust tends to fall into the sexual category, but this is something of, it relates to j- jealousy. Dake says this last commandment prohibits the inward desire of the heart from longing for, scheming, and putting forth any effort to acquire anything that belongs to another. So it is a desire. It's basically taking your eyes off of God and getting it on something else. And it will get you in trouble faster than anything else because the devil sees that and says, oh, I know my next target. Anything else?
I have notes on 18, 20, and 24 to 26.
Anything that stands out?
It says sometimes God speaks to his people with a majestic display of power, and other times he speaks quietly. Um, why the difference? He speaks in the way that best accomplishes his purposes.
Bingo.
At Sinai, the awesome display of light and sound was necessary to show Israel God's power and authority. Only then would they listen to Moses and Aaron. Like they were, even though they had seen all these miracles, they were still having a hard time trusting God.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So God was like, let me put a little sprinkle of healthy fear in. Fear of the Lord is a healthy fear.
Well, how many times in Egypt did they see a similar display, though?
I don't, so many times, but it's the Israelites. So
No. I mean, when like before Moses showed up, how many like crazy pagan god stuff did
he
they
was
see?
literally in a cloud leading them
I
out of
know, I
Egypt.
know, I know. But if the things God's
Okay.
doing now is okay,
It, even in Egypt, it took so many times for them to trust that God was actually going to lead them out of Egypt.
it just sounds like a neat comparison.
Okay. I don't know the exact number of times. Verse 20, throughout the Bible, we find this phrase, do not be afraid. God wasn't trying to scare the people. He was showing them his mighty power so that they would know he was the true God and would obey him. If they would just obey God, he would make his power available to them. So it was more about them following God, not God being like, I'll smite you. It's a healthy fear. And then my notes on 24 to 26, God had to start from scratch and teach them how to worship him. He gave them specific instructions about building altars because he wanted to control the way sacrifices were offered to prevent idolatry from creeping into worship. God did not allow the altar stones to be cut or shaped into any form, nor did he let the people build an altar just anywhere. This was designed to prevent them from starting their own religions or making changes in the way God wanted things done. God is not against creativity, but he is against us creating our own religion. Do you have any more notes from 18 to the end?
Uh, I just one note comes up about covetousness. Jesus talks about this. You have heard it said, "Do not covet your neighbor's wife." But I say, anyone who looks upon her with lust has already committed the crime. So this is setting up what that is.
Um, the only other notes I have are where I don't remember if we talked about it yesterday or in the sermon, but a lot of times the New Testament reflects on things of the Old Testament because the people in the New Testament didn't have the New Testament yet. All
Mhm.
they had to read on was the Old Testament. And so mine has a note where it lists out each commandment and then it lists out where Jesus backed it up with his words in the New Testament. So 20 verse 3, you shall have no other gods before me, lines up with Matthew 4:10, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. And then verse 4, you shall not make yourself an idol. Luke 16:13, no servant can serve two masters. Verse 7, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Matthew 5:34, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne. Verse 8, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. And then Mark 2:27-28, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath. Verse 12, honor your father and mother. Matthew 10:37, anyone who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Interesting. I'm kind of curious on like what the surrounding verses are on that one. Exodus 20:13, you shall not murder. Matthew 5:22, anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Exodus 20:14, you shall not commit adultery. Matthew 5:28, anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. 20:15, you shall not steal. Matthew 5:40, if someone wants to sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. 20:16, you shall not give false testimony. Matthew 12:36, men will have to give account on the day of judgment for every careless word they've spoken. Ooh,
Yeah,
that's an
that
interesting one
hurts.
too.
That hits.
20:17, you shall not covet. Luke 12:15, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. So what was the other one? Curious about these.
You find that one. There's an interesting note that Dake and Swaggart say both in verse 25. Yeah. Swaggart says, or so the verse is, and if you will make me an altar of stone, you shall not build it out of cut stone. For if you lift up your tool upon it, you have polluted it. Now that sounds weird, but here's what Swaggart says: no tool was to embellish the altar. It was perfect in its ordinary beauty in the eye of God. As such was and is Jesus as well. One might seek to paint the lily or adorn. Actually, no. Dake says a better one. This typified that man is not saved by human works. Salvation is not works. This typified that all human efforts and works to save the soul corrupt the whole plan of redemption by blood.
Matthew 10:37. So my notes on it are essentially that God is saying that Christ calls us to a higher mission than to find comfort and tranquility. Love of family is a law of God, but even this love can be self-serving and used as an excuse not to serve God or do his work. Statistically, if the husband takes his family to church, the kids are more likely to find Jesus than if it's the wife taking the kids to church and the husband's not going.
Mm-hmm.
The father/husband has a very significant role in whether or not his family follows Christ or not. And it's not saying it's impossible for the kids to find Christ, but your family can either lead you to Christ or they can hold you back from it.
Yeah.
So if I'm understanding correctly, that's what Christ is saying. Matthew 10:32, whoever acknowledges me before men, I will also acknowledge him before my Father in heaven. But whoever disowns me before men, I will disown him before my Father in heaven. Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves his father mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. It makes me think of the umbrella concept, like the husband should love Christ more than his wife. It shouldn't be that the husband loves his wife more than Christ.
Very,
Christ
very
has to
good.
be the God loved most. Because you see several marriages where they make the spouse the god of their household, and it's not good.
Not good.
Verse 38, and anyone who does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Interesting. And then the other one that stood out was 12:36. But I tell you that men will have to give account on the day of judgment for every careless word they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. That is some harsh words in 12:36-37.
Harsh as in serious.
Yeah.
These are some serious implications that do not get taught. These are values that do not get passed along unless you go to a church that actually teaches this stuff. Which, if you are looking for a church, look for our church down below in the description. We'd love to have you part of our church.
Those verses in context start at Matthew 12:33. Make a tree good and its fruit will be good, or make a tree bad and its fruit will be bad. For a tree is recognized by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you who are evil say anything good? For out of the overflow of the heart the mouth speaks. The good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him, and the evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in him. Man, that is... And like something else I think about with the Ten Commandments is these laws that God had to give to the people, I'm assuming came because they were having issues with these different situations. Like they had to be told, don't do that, that's bad. Because they didn't realize, or some of them didn't realize that was bad. So...
Yeah, it's the same as when you go to church and you find out that saying anything that comes to mind is also a bad idea. What? You mean I can't say rated R language around everybody? You look at me weird when I say it around kids? Well, in my house, we do that everywhere. I mean, we all know people like that, where it's a startling, like, what do you mean I can't say that?
Yeah, the amount of times I have to tell coworkers not to use curse words at work is too many times.
Yes.
So
there's some family where I have to pull them aside and say, stop saying that. We've got kids around, stop saying that. We were raised in the same household. What are you doing, you fool? And then I become the bad guy. Anyway.
yeah.
You will have to become the bad guy in order to do in order to live a godly life, you will have to appear as the bad guy to everybody else because they are of the world. They are of their father, the devil. I'm not saying they're Satanists, but they are following after the ways of the world.
We have to look at the fruit.
Yeah. All right, we're going to cut our notes there and join us next time for Exodus 22.
Or no, 21.
Exodus 21.